Hey everyone, Dockwell here, and welcome to another video. Today's video we're going to be going over the 5-position tier list for patch 7.32b, and this is the last position, the last tier list for this patch, and by now I don't think, I'm making these videos ahead of time, so if we haven't seen a C patch by now, I really don't think we're going to see one. I would be very surprised if they release a C patch next week, because that's like 2 weeks ahead of the last chance qualifier, and I would be very surprised, like I said, if they release it that close, especially for TI. So this is probably the patch in the meta we're going to go into TI with, so keep that in mind. And as always, before I jump into it, I just wanted to let you know that I get the statistics from the Trends tab, or the Dota buff tab, all of the games that are played in general. I mainly look at the high MMR ones. And then I also look at Dota 2 Pro Tracker to see all of the high MMR games in the Immortal bracket and the pros as well, what they're picking, banning, etc., how good the heroes are there. And then I also looked at the most recent pro matches, the professional games in the TI qualifiers that happened in every region. So I also looked at those. So without further ado, that's how I arrived at this list. And obviously it's my opinion a little bit there as well. So let's just jump into it. First, we have S tier. So S tier is Chen. Chen just feels like it's either completely broken and an S tier hero, or terrible and don't pick it. Now, obviously, it's S tier, but I hesitate to suggest that you pick this in your pubs, because Chen is a very weird hero. You need to know how to play Chen, know how to have impact in the early game, know how to get the right creeps, push towers, gank mid, whatever it is, get that, whatever creep it is that gets the little skeletons and runs at people, or like get a bunch of centaurs and just stomp people to death. This hero has super high impact, very good. Also, they changed some things about, I think, how the shard or the Ags works that makes this hero a little bit better and more viable than it was. But basically, this hero is just all about the creeps and knowing how to use them and utilize them effectively. But the biggest thing is you have to play around your heroes, the heroes on your team, to put pressure on the map, because obviously this hero falls off pretty drastically, and later on you just kind of become this aura bot that has a heal. So you need to be effective in the first 20 minutes, and that's why I generally don't suggest lower MMR players picking this hero, although he can be fun and he can be viable. It's more of like a high MMR thing. But I'm going to put him up here because, that's just how he is. He is one of the most broken heroes, so that's why I'm going to put him up there. Next, we have Undying. I think I've talked enough about Undying in the last two videos. A great offlaner, super broken. I think people are underestimating how broken this hero is right now, and I think this hero is going to be one of the top tier supports in TI. That's kind of my guess. I might be wrong about that, who knows, but I just feel like this hero, whenever I see it in pubs, it's absolutely ridiculous with the way they changed Decay and how it works, and Tombstone's always as good as it has been. His ultimate's way better than it used to be, with the slow and with the tankiness that he gets. So that's Undying. Not too much else to say that I haven't already said, but very, very good, even from the 5 position. Next, we have Omni Knight. So I actually underestimated in the recent patch that came out. I think it was, I don't know if it was the B patch, maybe it was just the 3.2 patch, but they changed some things about the hero. Like, I think they made the Dispel happen to yourself as well as the ally you're casting your ability on, which your Heavenly Grace, which I thought that was good. Like, don't get me wrong, I thought that was decent, but I didn't think that was like enough to make the hero super viable. But actually, it ends up being very, very good for a lot of different reasons, because it just makes you so much more survivable in general as a hero, that you're able to get way more spells off in the game. And you're not just like sitting back getting one round of spells off and then dying or whatever. And then obviously Guardian Angel, I think people just generally underestimate this ability. Like, this ability can be very, very effective in team fights at just like winning entire games. Just pressing your ult here in a team fight and just like taking no physical damage sometimes is something people underestimate a lot. And a lot of these heroes that are really good from the carry position just do insane quick bursts of physical damage. And if they're not able to dish that out, like Clinks, like Ursa, then it can feel really bad. Obviously, Slark is not one of those heroes, but even Faceless Void, like if you press your ultimate while Faceless Void chronos on the enemy team, like, yes, he's doing magic damage, but like not enough that I think it's really going to make a difference. Like, he's going to have a hard time killing you, and you're forcing him to buy Nullifier, which is really big. And I think this hero's just gotten some buffs, slow buffs over time, and now this new spell, Hammer of Purity, is really good in the laning stage, can actually do way more damage than you think. So I think overall, Omni Knight's really good. Look for him to be a very, very good 5-position hero in TI. Next, we have Crystal Maiden. Crystal Maiden was really bad for a long time. And then I think they've just been buffing this hero more and more to make her more relevant. They've been changing how Arcane Aura works to like get it to be more of a viable but not broken spell. And I think it's just really good in laning stage. This hero also now can like move with the shard, with Freezing Field. I think you do insane damage in Freezing Field. And you obviously can pump out tons of spells in the laning stage too. You could potentially even farm a little bit if you need to with Frostbite. I think overall this hero is really good right now. Look for it to be pretty good in TI, but maybe not like a top pick in TI though, because Crystal Main, the problem with Crystal Main has always been the same. It's just that if you get on top of the hero, it's so squishy, it's so slow. But if you're able to get like a blink, you're able to get some items, you're able to not just get jumped on and die, you can actually have a ton of impact in the laning stage and also later on in the game with how this hero works now. So Crystal Main is still very good, but very hard to play because you can also just feed and have like 20 deaths in a game, so keep that in mind. Next we have Disruptor. So Disruptor's kind of been on the upswing for a long time. They've been trying to buff this hero to make him more viable. The big problem is he's like a 5-position support that doesn't have any like real stun. Like he doesn't do much. Like he has big control, big AoE teamfight spells, but it just feels awkward for a 5-position. Well, now I think the biggest thing that they did for him is that they gave him damage on his Glimpse. So now Glimpse isn't just a positioning spell, it's also a damage spell for two main it's good for two main things. One is that not only does that let you gank even, like your ganking is even better. So now you're a really good ganking at chasing hero, but now when you do it, you're even doing way more damage. Like, what is it, like 300 damage max? Yeah, 300 damage. I mean, that's significant. That's a significant amount of damage, especially early on. And then people are kind of incentivized not to run away, so then they're just kind of standing there, and that makes them like take even more damage. The heroes on your team are able to jump them. And then the other big thing is one of the things you could do is if you got glimpsed, and then, you know, the guy, no one clicked you or Static Storm wasn't down, you could actually just blink out of the glimpse. Well, you can just no longer do that. So Blink Dagger isn't a counter to this anymore. So now all you have to do, the only thing you can really do is get a BKB. And then obviously if this hero gets items, gets his Ags, like late game this hero is an absolute beast with his Ags ultimate. So you can just really never count out a Disruptor. I think the big thing is he was greedy and now he's just way more effective at what he's always been able to do. So that's Disruptor, that's S tier, very, very good 5-position heroes. Now we move to A tier, and all these heroes are just pretty viable and overall really good from the 5-position. We have Marcy here, who I kind of already talked about Marcy, I think in the 4-position video. They changed how her spells work a little bit. Obviously, they switched the stun and the slow, but still very, very good. Not as broken, I think, as it once was, but still a very, very good hero. Probably not as good as at 5 as it is at a 4 at the 4 position, but still a viable 5, can still dominate lanes, can still be very impactful. Just probably doesn't get those items to become that other core from the 5 position, but you can still play it. Jakiro, I think, is one of the best 5s right now, especially in pubs, because if you look, all these heroes like Chen, kind of weird, Undying, kind of weird, you know, all these heroes have like some kind of save or problem with them, even though they're like broken right now and they're really good. They have these weird niches that make them special. Jakiro is just an overall fundamentally sound and standard good 5 position. It's just really good. I think it's probably one of the best 5 positions to spam if you're playing 5 and you're getting role queue games. It's just a great hero right now from that position. Does insane damage, very hard to run away from in lane. Like if you have any kind of aggressive carry, like you just will snowball the lane, crush the enemy. It's so hard to deal with a Jakiro and like an Ursa or any kind of hero that wants to jump on top of you and can do damage early if you're paired with a good carry like that. So Jakiro, nothing super special, just good Jakiro stuff. Dazzle, I think, used to be a little bit better. I think they nerfed the shard a little bit because this hero was completely busted, but it's still really good. I mean, having that hex, that AoE hex with the shard, still good. The save is still great. Axe isn't that good, so obviously going through his Shallow Grave, it's really hard to do that unless you pick an Axe. I don't know that there's anything else. Maybe there are a couple other spells you can go through, but I'm not thinking of them right now. But overall, this hero isn't as broken as it was, but it's still very good. Does all the same things that Dazzle has done for a while. Just the numbers were nerfed a little bit on it, so it's not S tier. Ogre, pretty good Ogre patch right now. I think it just does normal Ogre things. Now he isn't as much of like a man-fighty, bruisey hero in the way of like he doesn't take much damage, but he has insane regen now. They kind of did the same thing to him as they did to Centaur, which it kind of offsets in a way, but it's more that like in the past you could trade better, but if you lost your HP, obviously you need more regen items. Well, now it's like you can trade really well because you can kind of like battle them, back off for a little bit, regen your HP up pretty quickly, and then go back in. And you can just kind of do that over and over. And it's like a war of attrition with them, with the enemy, especially with your damage over time. That can be, once you get some levels in that, man, it's so annoying to play against Ogre. Venge, I think Venge as a 5 is more valuable than a 4 because at the 4 position, you just need to get that Ags, and it's hard to get that Ags. It's okay as a Venge 5 to kind of just swap and stun and be, that's it. Because, you know, you're not really expected to do much else as a 5 position. So I think that's why she's able to be a better 5 position than a 4 position. That's pretty much the long and short of Venge, but just does all the same things. And then eventually, if you do get your Ags, it can be really, really annoying to fight into a Venge. I think if you have a 5 position Venge and you get an Ags timing that's generally decent, I think you just win the game, to be honest. So Bane is A tier, does all the same things Bane does. I think there was a couple patches ago Bane was S tier. Not as good. It's similar to Dazzle. Not as good as it was at that time, but I think some small nerfs, but still very, very good, very effective. Can trade really well in lane. I think they buffed it a little bit. I think the damage on Nightmare, you get healed from that. So I think this hero is just a really good trader in lane, has a pretty good laning stage. And then later on in the game, I think you can just never count out Grip. Like, unless you have some kind of long range way to deal with Grip, or you have some kind of Rubik or something, like Grip is just always going to be a very good spell. Winter Wyvern, very good in at team fighting. Pretty decent laning stage. I think the laning stage is just kind of probably one of the weaker parts of the hero, honestly. I mean, you can harass and stuff like that, but it's mainly about healing people, harassing a little bit, but it's honestly just like a big team fight hero, and I think that's really good. Especially, I think it's up here mostly for Faceless Void, honestly, because if Faceless Void is on the enemy team, you can just curse either Faceless Void or teammates or whatever, but usually the Faceless Void in Chrono, and that's just like the biggest counter. So I think that's the biggest reason why this is up here, is because Faceless Void is S tier. It's like the best carry overall. So Winter Wyvern's like always going to be viable if Faceless Void is good. Dawnbreaker, I think better as a 5 than a 4. Pretty viable still. But, there's nothing super special about her. I just think she's kind of fallen off a little bit. Maybe even be B tier, but her win rate is still pretty good at A tier. And people are still picking her, even though she's not like as crazy broken as she once was. Nothing super special to say about her. Nothing crazy, but the same thing that she's always been doing. She's been doing in last patch. Just not as well, and people haven't, I think people kind of forgot about her as a 5 position, but it's still effective. It still has a good win rate. Lich, on the upswing. I think a lot of these defensive supports, like Omni Knight and such, are becoming a little bit better now. Lich has been getting buff after buff after buff. These team fight, like defensive supports. Also, this, I think it's the Shard. Let me just look. Yeah, the Ice Spire is absolutely ridiculous, actually. I think the Ice Spire is crazy. I think Ice Spire is what makes this hero viable. Like, if you get the Shard and just place it down in a team fight and you cast your ultimate, like, the big problem with the ultimate was, it'd bounce around. You wasn't reliable to doing a lot of damage. But now this Shard just lets you, like, even solo kill heroes and stuff like that. It's pretty great. I think that's one of the biggest things that the hero does. It, like, just gives this hero a little bit more to do other than just, like, armor somebody or a tower and then just like cast a slow. Like, that just seemed like that's all it did and did nothing. But now the ultimate is like where the ultimate felt really bad in the past. With that Shard, now the ultimate feels legitimate, like an actual threat in team fights. So that's A tier. Next, we're going to go to B tier. So B tier, my personal favorite hero right now for 5 positions is Witch Doctor, because this is another hero, kind of like Lich, that they've just been buffing and buffing and buffing, kind of like Disruptor, and we'll see Warlock in a second. They've just been buffing this hero a lot to get it more viable because it hasn't been viable in so long. And I think now it's at the point where I think this hero's broken in pubs. Like, personally, I'd put this A or S tier in pubs. It's just not, like, it's still in B, though, because that's just, like, my personal bias, and it's really not an effective and good hero in the pros or like higher MMRs, but like any lower MMR player, I think this hero just does insane damage. It has, the stun isn't that reliable, sure, but you're still stunning people. You can still stun lock teams. It's really good. You obviously have the Shard that gives you like 2 mini ultimates, which is a little bit of a dodging spell. Like, somebody can try to commit onto you, just press that Shard, the Voodoo switcheroo, and then they just have to like disengage, and you're doing damage. And if you got your damage spell onto them, your Maledict, it's just, this hero is like a carry from the 5 position, and you can dominate lanes with this hero. Like, I have gotten insane kill streaks, dominated lanes with Witch Doctor, with how much damage your Maledict can do. So really, really good hero, I think. One of my favorite heroes, but just obviously not a great hero at high MMRs or in the pros yet. But look for it to potentially be sometime if they keep buffing it. Treant, I think I talked about it in the 4 position video. Just pretty good all around. I think Living Armor is just like broken. I think it's just really good, hard to push into, and that's really important against a lot of these like faster paced lineups. Still not the best hero. Kind of has some weird awkward timings where it's like kind of what do? You just sit in trees, maybe farm a little bit. But obviously, root ultimate that goes through BKB, very good, and then living armor is really good. That's kind of what this hero does. Just living armor plus your ultimate is kind of what you do. And not the best, but still viable. Clockwork, I think I talked about him already in the 4 position. Pretty good, pretty viable, probably more of an off lane with the broken Ags, but generally is decent. I just don't think, potentially even as a 5 position, he might be a little bit lower like C, because I just don't really love this hero as a 5 position. I think it's more of a 4 or an off lane, but against the right heroes, in the right lineups, if you're really good at playing Clockwork, you could potentially make the 5 position work. Zeus is kind of like Clockwork in a way where I almost would put him C tier a little bit, but the win rate is still decent. He's still a decent support, decent mid laner, just not as good as he once was in the last patch. And probably the 5 position is the worst place to pick Zeus because he's not your traditional 5 position. He's a lot about damage. It's still viable. It's still pickable. I just don't see it happen too often. It's a little bit griefy. So maybe I would put it in C tier if I had to reevaluate this. But I mean, the win rate's still pretty good from the 5 position. So hey, I mean, if that works, it works. And you do have a lot of more aggressive carries that like, you know, have stuns or at least some kind of slow or like pounce or Earthshock from Ursa. These kinds of things that you can just rely on your 5 to do a little bit more damage. That's definitely something that's possible. AA, it kind of feels like either it's a really good AA patch or not. And I think this patch is generally decent for AA because you can be against heroes like Slark that really hate this hero. This hero is just all about kind of countering heroes in the game. So if there's heroes that rely on regen, like Slark, like Lone Druid, like Huskar, you know, this hero just is broken against those heroes. And if you don't have a hero where you're just straight up countering the regen, like Death Prophet also, yeah, Death Prophet is like broken this patch. So I think that's one of the biggest reasons that AA is viable. Like if you pick AA into Death Prophet, that's really good because Death Prophet feels too good. I don't have Death Prophet in my support lists, which I probably should, honestly. So I expect a couple comments, where's the Death Prophet? But I don't really put it here because I think Death Prophet is only really a support because the hero is just so broken. It's not supposed to be a support. Like, it doesn't have typical support stuff. It's just not a support, but people play it as one. It's like Queen of Pain or something like that. It's just not a support, but people play it as it because it's like completely ridiculous. So anyway, AA is a very good counter to Death Prophet. So if you see a Death Prophet in the game, you think someone's going to pick it, picking AA isn't bad, or preemptively picking this so people can't pick Death Prophet or lose the game if they do is kind of a good strategy. Abaddon, kind of on the rise here with all these defensive supports like I talked about, but probably one of the worst of the defensive supports, if not the worst, other than like maybe Io. I think the hero's generally decent. You can never count out the Dispel and the heals, but I don't think it's as good as a lot of the other defensive supports. That's kind of the long and short of it. Still okay, but not that great. Now, next we have C tier here. I said before in the 4 position patch video, I really like Snapfire. I think it does a little bit of everything. I think it's actually really good, but the win rate is always pretty bad because it was like S and A tier like maybe a year or so ago. It keeps getting nerfed or small changes because it's pretty popular. I think recently it's gotten some buffs, it's gotten some love, and it just hasn't gotten back to where it once was. But I still think if you're looking for a support to pick and spam, I think Snapfire is really good, even though the win rate isn't that great. Warlock, they've been trying to make this hero more relevant. It's definitely not F tier like it was for probably the last 5 years, but it's still not good. I think last patch I put it maybe in B just to give it some love because it's always been an F. But now this patch, yeah, it's just not great. I mean, yeah, you're defensive kind of, and you heal kind of, and your slow is a little bit better than it was before, and your ultimate can carry games late if you're like 1k MMR, but otherwise, like, I don't know. I never see this hero because it's really bad, and it just, unless you're getting insane ultimates and these golems just kill like the enemy really quickly, like, I think there's just too much damage now. These golems just melt. I like never see them have that big of an impact. Lastly, we have, next we have Phoenix here in the C tier, and it's kind of similar to the 4 position Phoenix. It's just like all about team fight, all about insane damage, all or nothing team fight. And if you're not able to get off good eggs and have good impact with that team fight, you just feel like you do nothing. It just feels really bad, and probably is even worse as a 5 position, but the stats say it's decent, so I'm going to put it up here, but I don't love it as a 5, probably more of a 4. Lion, probably better as a 5, at least that's what the stats say. I still think it's kind of crap, but I mean, I guess it's having some success in the C tier, to put it in the C tier, but I still don't love the hero. I mean, you can never really count out stuns and hexes like I say, but it's just not that good. Silencer, this is just a 5 position that just likes to click R. I think they're trying to make this hero more of a core. So look for, you know, maybe some more buffs over the next year or so to make this hero an actual core. I think it's semi-viable as a core right now, but like not enough that I'm actually going to put it on the core list or like the mid list and make it like real. But I think that's what they're transitioning to, because, you know, any hero that has some kind of right-click enhancing ability like Silencer does, it's better if that's a core. But obviously the rest of the spells, it just feels really weird as a core. So then, you know, people pick it as a support just to press R, and that's really all it does. It just presses R, honestly. So unless you're in a good game where pressing R is very good, it's not a Silencer game. And then the last of the good tier, or the normal pickable tiers, is D tier, which is Io and Enchantress. They were also in the D tier for 4 position. I think these two heroes, like I said before, they are more pro high MMR picks, and I just think they have fallen off a lot in the recent patches because they've been so strong for so long. They've been nerfed a lot. Now, obviously, it's TI. Anything could happen. These heroes could come back and just become S tier heroes. I mean, I know Chen is very good right now, but I don't know. I don't see them being that good. Their win rates aren't that good. Maybe they will, you know, because it's TI, like I said, they'll become more popular, but I just don't see it right now. Shadow Demon, it's down here in D. The win rate says it's terrible. But I have seen it be pretty effective sometimes. I think this hero is a little bit underrated. Against the right matchups where you can make good illusions of heroes, it can be very good. It does have obviously some weaknesses, some bad points where, like, you know, it's very offensive, all or nothing kind of thing. If you get jumped on, you just die. You don't really push towers or do much else. So there are problems with the hero, but if you can snowball and you can like get aggressive on the enemy, take over the map, and you just have this like insane ability to just win team fights with the hero and gank, I think it can be very, very viable and very good. But right now it's just terrible. I just think it's one of these weird heroes that's been kind of obscure for a very long time. I think they need to change something about the hero to make it more viable. Maybe one day soon it will be like broken, but I just don't see it happening right now. Wind Ranger been nerfed a lot ever since Seb was playing it like a god, and it just hasn't been viable since then. But I mean, who knows? Seb can still play and probably make it look good. You're just kind of like a stun bot and a shard bot with the Gale Force. That's kind of all you do with this hero as a support, and just it's not as good as it once was. Pugna has fallen off a lot ever since they changed. They nerfed it a few patches ago. It's kind of more back as a core, I'd say, as a mid laner to push the tower. But still, it's not very good in general as a support right now. Not like it once was. It's still pickable, but it's not F tier. Like, you're not going to grief the game, but it's just not great. Then lastly, we have F tier. All these heroes I think are like not pickable as 5 or pretty bad because the win rate says they're bad. So I'll just actually say Shadow Shaman is probably a way better 4. I put Shadow Shaman as an F in this because the win rate is kind of telling me this. Like, it's a way better 4 position. The win rate is like insanely different in 4 and 5 position. And I think just as a 5, it's way too slow. The way it works, it just doesn't work as a 5. It's way more a 4, I think, because you need a strong laner to be with. And so you need to get items on this hero to actually be effective. It's just not a good 5. Then Keeper of the Light, falling off completely. Not a good hero right now. Just don't pick this hero ever. Venomancer, not a 5. You just can't pick this hero as a 5. It just feels like crap. Grimstroke, I put this hero in F because the win rate's like 30% or something ridiculous. But I think with like Ursa and Slark, I've seen it do kind of well. It just, I think you need, like, other than the laning stage with the way the stun works and some of these things, unless you're against like a PL or, you know, unless you're against the right heroes, it just feels really bad. Oracle, probably the only defensive support that is just not good. I just don't ever see Oracle doing well, and the win rate is terrible. And I just don't think it's good. If you're going to pick a defensive support, honestly, any other defensive support, just pick Omni Knight. Like, don't pick Oracle. It's terrible compared to any of these other defensive supports. Pudge, not a 5. That's a grief. Do not pick this hero 5. Don't do it. And then Elder Titan, not good in general right now, so just don't pick it as 5. Like, you're just griefing the game again. You're trying to play carry from the 5 position. Just don't do it. So that is the F tier, and that is the 5 position tier list for patch 7.32b. As always, guys, if you like the video, like, comment, subscribe, all of those kinds of things. If you want to support me and see more videos like this into the future, consider going to my Patreon down below and either signing up just monthly to donate, you know, in general to help me out, or to go there for coaching. I also offer coaching there as well. So as always, guys, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.